Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of lies spinning from their mouths. Start looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. On the face of all mankind, our numbers up and the dead for the time. Go along to get along in the tide by the siren song. The flames are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The hordes upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait. Don't follow the strings to find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's worldwide genocide. The overlords of hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. Pile of bodies rotten, covered in fire. But no one wants to talk about it. Strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol, in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. My name is Cliff. I'm joined by Tim via Skype tonight. It is Wednesday, February the 16th, 2022. We're coming to you live, as always, at least since episode 8 of this series, from Carter County at the beautiful Iron Mountain. If you're joining us, I'd like you to do us a favor. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button there. Hit the notification bell so you'll know when we go live and you can participate in the conversation with us. So that's what we really want this podcast to be, is an audience-driven, well, maybe not audience-driven, but we want to have a lot of audience participation. We don't want to take your ideas. But Tim and I are still going to kind of make it most of the things that we're interested in, and hopefully you find them interested in too. We've grown the channel quite a bit since we started. We're up over 3,000 views on it. We're up to 78 subscribers. We've had, I forget how many, last time I checked it was like 650 hours of content watched. So people are watching the videos, people are commenting and participating. People are finding them from a lot of different manners. People are sharing them through Facebook. people are picking it up through YouTube and text messaging. And as I said on the last video, we've got a skeleton crew, it may be, but we've got about 35, actually now up to 43 for the last few episodes who have watched the whole episode. So that's nice to have you guys returning every Sunday with us and getting in on this conversation with us and commenting on the videos and all that good stuff. We had somebody get in the Discord and somebody in the Skype on the last episode, so that's cool to happen. But we want to thank you for joining us. Tim, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good. We were trying to get started a little earlier tonight. We wanted to be in here at 10 o'clock, but we just had all kinds of technical issues left over from the last episode. Apparently, my Wi-Fi was unhappy. The router needed to be reset, and that should clear up most of the streaming issues that we had last time with the glitchiness. But the audio still got through, and most of the episode did make it onto YouTube. So if you want to check that out, it was actually a pretty interesting episode. We didn't really explain a whole lot of it, but we just showed some of the symbolism that was seen in the Super Bowl halftime shows. We'll leave that to you to decide what a lot of that stuff means, but we're just showing you, pointing out the kind of things that we see. And hopefully you found that interesting. If you didn't see it, go check it out. That one actually got quite a few views overnight on that one. So maybe people were tuning in looking for other Super Bowl stuff in YouTube and just happened across us.
Probably had something to do
could be
lack of content on Super Bowl symbolism.
Do what now?
Because you said you were having a hard time even finding videos explaining it, so that could explain why we got a little bit of a uptick on it.
There, if you look there's a lot of blogs and little smaller websites that kind of give you ideas about what a lot of those symbols mean, and then there's the Freemasonic ones, which are largely based in biblical symbolism, and a lot of those symbols are explained in the Bible. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, you can look it up. It's really not hard to search and find out exactly what some of those things mean as far as in a biblical or Masonic context. There's a lot of that information out there. It's kind of when you get into the old mystery religions from 5,000-6,000 years ago, the different the different symbols can be kind of hard to discern and tell exactly what it is that it's supposed to be. So the reason I wanted to go ahead and we had been talking before about doing a Wednesday or Thursday night broadcast, but I kind of, as we talked about on the Sunday broadcast, we want this to kind of be a cozy place where you come and kick up your feet, relax, see what we're talking about, comment on it, get in there and mix it up and do all that good stuff. But we want you to know when to find us. So after Sunday and Wednesday like church kind of, but in the evening when you're kicking up and you're getting ready to go to bed and relax and get ready for the work day in the morning, we want to be a cool place to hang out, and hopefully you'll join us there.
I can't imagine my voice having any sort of an ASMR quality. Imagine anybody that's stayed up to 10 o'clock on a Wednesday and wants to hear my voice is probably going to stay up.
You're probably right about that. That's just the kind of people we are, Tim. I stayed up kind of late last night, dude. I've been playing this survival game on the PS4 called DayZ or Days. It's like ultra realistic. It's not really a game for everybody, but it's one of those that like when you get started in it, you can't put it down because you're always looking for food and water and all this stuff, and it's just a constant struggle for survival. But I stayed up kind of late last night. I didn't even need your voice to grate on me to keep me up till pretty late last night. But I'm going to try not to do that tonight. But I did want to go ahead and do a stream tonight because there's a lot been going on with some of the things that we've been talking about, with especially in regard to some of the vaccine mandates that has come up several times in the show over the past several months. And when we first started talking about it, we didn't really want to make it a big focus of the show because a lot of people are doing that already. But at the same time, it's kind of an elephant in the room. We can't not mention it. And I feel pretty strongly about it, so definitely can't not mention it. But some of the things that I wanted to talk to you about tonight, if you haven't noticed, if you've been in the American press where it's not been as big of a deal made about it as in other places, a group of Canadian truckers calling themselves the Freedom Convoy have showed up in Ottawa, and they are blockading the city. And these guys are truckers, professionals who understand logistics and transportation and shipping, and they're basically using old school naval blockade techniques to stop movement of goods in and out of the city. And the reason they're doing this is because they are standing up against the vaccine mandates for the truckers. Now, and then I think the Canadian government wants anyone who crosses the border to have the vaccine, including the truckers. And it's actually 90% of the truckers are vaccinated, but a lot of these guys are standing up for the 10% that don't want it because they believe in bodily autonomy and they believe in freedom of the individual. So that really shows you something right there. This is not just a bunch of crazy guys who don't want to do what they're told or whatever. It's actually a group of people who have complied but believe in the right of others not to do so if they choose. Tim, have you been paying much attention to it? Have you been following this story much?
I mean, I've seen it in like the recommended videos, top of different feeds and that sort of thing. I've clicked a few times to see, which I guess is a subject I want to bring up and see if you're even aware of it. I began clicking on POV cameras where people were just walking around the streets of Ottawa, like on the sidewalk, and just kind of showing, hey, kind of like what we would do if something like that happened here. None of them have like giant subscriber counts or anything like that. But I noticed another channel that I followed today on YouTube put up a picture. It was a screen cap with a kind of like a sorry logo, and it explained. It's really cryptic what YouTube even means by this. Something to the extent of subscribe to this channel and get their viewing more reach because and you're not allowed to watch the video or something. It looks like maybe I'm reading into it wrong. I'm just used to big tech doing really screwbally things like this. It looks like they're trying to limit newer channels from having videos
That's strange.
go viral.
I've not seen that, but that sounds.
It very recent. I saw the post probably about 40 minutes ago, maybe longer.
Well, that goes right with.
I think it has some.
There was a okay there with the whole Joe Rogan situation. A podcaster that I listen to, quite frankly, out of New York, he's been saying consistently since the whole thing started, Joe Rogan is going to be fine. But he says the aim of this is to stop these sprouting new podcasts because here's the thing. The reason that people watch Joe Rogan and the reason that they don't watch CNN and MSNBC, the ratings on these networks are going down like crazy. And they have been ever since they haven't had Donald Trump in office to beat up on. Now, I think they still got a pretty good punching bag with Joe Biden, but for whatever reason, you read into it whatever you want, they're not using him as effectively as a punching bag as they did Donald Trump. Although they have...
Well, it doesn't the same because MSNBC can't beat up on Joe Biden after they praised him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't work the same. That's like... Well, it's...
Well, they have... I will say the press has kind of turned on Biden a little bit. They've not been.
You don't think it's because it's just like if there's no news, you got to talk about something. Well, like even at this point, the Biden beating is almost a little bit derivative, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was the same reason. Like I got sick of the Trump jokes. After a while, it's just like saying it's the exact same thing, a little bit more. The implications are different with Biden. I guess you could say that maybe MSNBC and stuff like that doesn't report on the negatives for those sorts of reasons. But I really don't think that. Okay, well, like if somebody reports on Trump, he was good press no matter what. Because if people loved him, they were going to watch him and rah, and if they hated him, they would bog pile on top of it. But with Biden, it's like even people that like him, nobody really wants to watch him. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's hard to listen to him talk. Like, can you imagine being even in high school, the first time Bush was running, and I was like, yeah, I didn't really listen to him talk because he sounded like a buffoon.
We're going to bring down them oil prices, America. Yeah. And we're going to get to them terrorists. Now watch me hit this drive. But yeah, I agree. It's like, it kind of is, it's almost like beating up on, I don't know, beating a kid up or something to make fun of Biden. But I'll tell you, this guy, Kyle Dunnigan, that I found on Instagram, he does, beat up on a kid pretty good here. So I'm going to share my screen here with you, Tim, so you can see, and then I'm going to share it with our share it with our. Well, I'm not sharing it here. Share it with our viewers too.
You better talk
Yeah.
good, because
Well,
the algorithm say you're snot.
Yeah.
This is commentary.
This is commentary. Oh, I don't know if our viewers can hear this.
Probably
Tell
not.
me if you can. You
'Cause I
can't.
can't.
Okay.
I cannot.
Man, it was really funny too. But I do need to figure this out so where they can hear us. Are you sure? Are you seeing my screen there, Tim?
See it on my computer over here. It's one of those. Oh heck, I remember. I remember a comedian back in the day was putting those face filters on. I guess that's what they call them.
Let's see now if it'll do it. I don't know what the kind of filter this is, but that's a shame because this is hilarious.
Well, you can
Yeah,
link
I
it in the
can,
bottom. They
man,
can
but
watch
that
it.
doesn't have the same effect. But while we talk about other stuff, I'll try to figure that out. But in any case, it's gonna be, you know, kind of the point's gonna be moot now that we're not done talking about Biden. So, oh well, maybe next time I'll get an opportunity to play that for you. But Kyle Dunnigan on Instagram, he's got some pretty hilarious stuff up there. But yeah, we were back. We were getting onto the trucker convoy, and we were kind of explaining the situation. Now, this has been referred to in some circles as the honking, because these truckers, as they're doing this blockade, they are honking the horn incessantly, driving people crazy. And you've had a lot of people complaining about it, and you've had kind of the left side of the aisle who generally is supporter of workers' rights movement, has really been against the truckers in this case, and you've had kind of more of your right side and your Republicans who've been more supportive of them. And why do you think that is, Tim?
Well, my honest opinion is because we're a divided people.
But isn't that
Like,
in a side that
that we're
generally
playing.
that they would take the opposite side on?
No, because like I said, I think on like a cultural level, we've got have like a mind virus or something going on. Because like you name your group, for example, Antifa, and then you don't attack fascism, and then like for example, like if he was an Antifa, this would be the perfect time to finally join out and go out in the streets and just join the truckers and
Right.
just camp out.
I mean, this
Like
is
all
this is
mass
this is a
numbers.
government telling. I mean, this by and then well, we haven't even gotten to the newest news on that. So keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, and if I wanted to flip it, because this is the way I say it, um, in the early days of like the like George Floyd and that sort of, I guess any of the cop killings, BLM had people's support. It was, would they lose people is they don't want, and I know we could go on like a theoretical thing, like it's because these movement gets hijacked by outside entities. But when these movements get started, they say, we want this. And people go, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't have dead black people in the street. And then they go, and by the way, we need to flip our entire government to a communist. And everybody goes, no,
Yeah.
you lost
Well,
us.
yeah. It was really when it
You know
kind of
what I'm
came
saying?
out.
And it seems that that's always the case they go to. If people would focus on the one thing that they're doing, they would actually get things done. But they're the upper class are so good at dividing people, you would never get the right and left out under one
Well,
protest. I mean, they might. I mean, we'll see how far Canada can push it. But I mean, not down here in Tennessee.
well,
I've
you're
never
right
seen it.
about everybody kind of agreeing at first because everybody saw what George Floyd situation and thought that was awful, and that you know there were some people who had different views on it, but generally speaking, people were repulsed by that kind of thing, and you kind of lost everybody though when you had like your founders of BLM and people of Patrice Kohler's collecting all this money from donations and then buying these huge houses, and then also
Well, yeah, I guess like if you get like BLM turning into a scam, I could have called that from the beginning just because that's what like people that take advantage of people going through the worst times do, kind of like faith healers, those sorts of con artists. But even on its face value, like if it hadn't been a title of a BLM, like maybe it's just pissed off people of Kenosha, Wisconsin. Like, I would still get behind those people if they say that their cops are killing their citizens for no reason. But the police department in Kenosha, Wisconsin being vastly corrupt has nothing to do with flipping the entire country's political system. But that's the stretch that they want to do it. And I swear they do that by getting in people's brains. It's like you can't conflate being a good person with being religious, for example. When I was a kid, like, I couldn't fathom how anybody who was a good person wouldn't
Right.
also be a Christian. It's just mind-boggling. But that's the same sort of childish mentality we're dealing with in a lot of people.
Well said. And I think when you also had the more right side, they went to pointing out a lot of the things that BLM was saying, like, for example, on their website, that they wanted to end the nuclear family. That didn't really play very well with a lot of people. And then with the whole basically saying they were trained Marxists, and they had more of basically a communist ideology to the whole thing.
Yeah. Like, I could really sympathize with a lot of those those early day protesters, because you could see the look in their eyes that they would say some of those stuff that would make people go, what the hell did they just say? And that some of the stuff that would roll off their tongue, they wouldn't even know that what they were saying would be considered crazy by a lot of people, because they've been inside their little hug box chambers for a long time. We were basically raised in the basement of churches and stuff, so seeing the ugly world was a shock to my mind when we first got out there. But it's the same group with a lot of college students and stuff. It's really strange. In a lot of ways, you can't blame people for acting foolishly.
Well, I figured out the problem here with the desktop audio.
I think that if somebody was really into protesting the government, they would at least be out there protesting with
Right.
truckers right now, because what about trucker says Republican right off the bat? That doesn't seem like necessarily.
Well, the truckers really are the workers, man. If you're workers of the world are uniting, and where are you at?
But I mean, I've had a job working backdoor receiving I don't anymore, but I had it for a pretty good long time. But I have to do that work with truckers and stuff, and it never seemed like a job where it was all these guys are Republicans and Democrats. It seemed like a pretty good mixed group of people.
You're right. And as I said earlier, most of the truckers who are involved are actually vaccinated. They just believe in the right of people who don't want to be, to not have to be. Now, the reason that I wanted to go ahead and get on this stream now is because we had something pretty crazy happen here on Valentine's Day, and that is Justin Castro, or Justin Trudeau. He invoked the Emergency Powers Act in order to end the protests. Now, there's been talk. They've tried a lot of different things to get these guys out of here. What they've done is they tried towing them, and the tow companies basically just said, no, we can't do it. They tried to have the police aren't able to tow them. You've had all kinds of craziness going on with them trying to move these guys, and everything they've tried has not worked, as I said, because the truckers are basically using naval blockade techniques. And if you've ever gone down the highway and pissed off a trucker, and they've decided they don't want you to go any further, well, then you know exactly what it's like for these guys, and that's probably just been a brief second while you're going down the highway compared to this. It's been going on for 2.5 weeks or so, and I'm sure that the people up there are getting tired of hearing the honks, but the
is that really what
they
they're
are?
complaining
Yeah,
about?
well, I mean, I imagine it's got to be very unpleasant.
Our city is shut down.
It's got.
Well, that's a strange thing. Sorry, I'm trying to quit showing my stripper cleavage here. It seems like that would be the least of their concerns. Can you imagine if your whole neighborhood was filled full of trucks and you couldn't eat or anything, but you were mad because they wouldn't quit honking?
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of the point of the honking, though, is to drive you crazy, because it's basically like Justin Trudeau says, all you have to do is comply and all this will be over. Well, Mr. Trudeau, all you have to do is comply and try to end your attempts to force people to take this medication that they don't want to take, and this will all be over. That's what that's what the truckers have said. But let's go ahead and read we'll check out Mr. Trudeau here for just a second. I think I've got the audio straightened up so where we can actually hear him. So let's see what he has to say.
We're entering the third week of illegal blockades that have been disrupting the lives of too many Canadians. Here in our capital city, families and small businesses have been enduring illegal obstruction of their neighborhoods, occupying streets, harassing
There you
people,
go.
breaking the law. This is not a peaceful protest. After discussing with Cabinet and caucus, after consultation with premiers from all provinces and territories, after speaking with opposition leaders, the federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. I want to be very clear. The scope of these measures will be time-limited, geographically targeted, as well as reasonable and proportionate to the threats they are meant to address. The Emergencies Act will be used to strengthen and support law enforcement agencies at all levels across the country. This is about keeping Canadians safe, protecting people's jobs, and restoring confidence in our institutions. We're not using the Emergencies Act to call in the military. We're not suspending fundamental rights or overriding the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We are not limiting people's freedom of speech. We are not limiting freedom of peaceful assembly. We are not preventing people from exercising their right to protest legally. We are reinforcing the principles, values, and institutions that keep all Canadians free.
That doesn't sound like something that keeps all Canadians free. One
What
thing
do
that
cows
stood
have
out
to
to
do with
me.
the future of
Sorry,
trucking?
kill this.
At Chevron, we're working with partners to turn the methane
Frick off,
from cow
Chevron.
waste.
But yeah, it doesn't seem like something. Let me fix the screen back here so you can see me again, Tim. Sorry. Or can you see me? There we go.
No, I just see CB in the middle of the screen.
Okay.
I heard you're fine, that's okay. I'm just curious, like it says on the thing, it says, last resort.
You couldn't hear any of that, could you? Sorry.
No.
I
when
just
it
now
when it says
clicked
last-
share computer sound with you. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. But like, so okay, let's say, last resort. Well, what happens if they go all the way to the extent where he says, all right, we're moving the military in, guns blazing, and then all the military says, no, we're not doing that.
No, that's what we can hope for. I pulled up the Emergencies Act here. I'll stick this in the description if anybody wants to read this over. But this basically has allowed Justin he can freeze people's bank accounts if they're involved in this. If they have contributed to it in any way, he can freeze their bank accounts. If there's people we saw, Polish immigrants coming up and bringing Polish sausages, and people bringing gasoline to the truckers, and now they can have their bank accounts frozen or suspended. They can be prevented from leaving the country. They can be prevented. I mean, theoretically, they could be put into house arrest, and this is all without warrants too. This under the Emergency Powers Act. Now, he said we're not going to be bringing the military in, but he did not say we can't bring the military in with this. And he also, I noticed that he said this is going to be a proportionate response, and that sounds very reasonable, doesn't it, Tim? To have a proportionate response, and for a very targeted, and only for this extreme thing, and then those powers will go away. But the Freedom Convoy leaders have a concern, and can you see the screen, Tim?
See, well, I could. Now it's back to
All right.
CB again.
What about now?
I see a Daily
Okay.
Mail article.
Oh, yeah, you're on your phone.
Oh,
Okay.
wait, good enough.
So I'm just going to read it to you here. This is the Freedom Convoy leaders claim nefarious elements are planning to plant 2,000 stolen guns on protesters in Ottawa to discredit their movement after Mounties arrested with 11 with caches of firearms in Alberta. Okay, this comes after we saw a story. This was from yesterday, this story from the Freedom Convoy leaders. We saw a story also on the 15th that 2,000 guns were missing after a truck was stolen from Petersburg. The truck was found and the guns are still missing. So basically these truckers, or some of the leaders of them, have said that they feel like that this is part of something nefarious, and they want to go ahead and put it out there. They don't have any evidence of this, but it just seems very suspicious to them. They believe that these guns are going to try to be distributed amongst people who may, after that, infiltrate the protests and cause violence or cause chaos, causing Canada to then, whether it's bringing the military or use SWAT teams or whatever it is, to start using force against these people. And that was the first thing when I heard this emergency act being announced. My first thing was I feel like he was almost saying, if you read between the lines, we're ready for whatever, but we're only going to do what we have to do, and kind of wanting to have to do it. I don't know.
It sounds like it's similar to the Emergency Powers Act that they've used here in the United States, though, right?
It's it's we basically
'Cause
had
didn't,
martial law during
didn't Trump
2020.
declare an Emergency Powers Act. Well, Trump declared an Emergency Powers Act, right? With
He
the
did, yeah.
pandemic,
He
right? So
declared
he
a
could
national
get,
emergency, which gives the governors a lot more power than they normally have. That's how a lot of these governors were able to shut down their states during the
yeah.
pandemic. They didn't have the power to do this until Mr. Trump authorized the national emergency. So yeah, it's a similar thing. It does give almost dictatorial powers whenever you pass this. We saw during the beginning of the pandemic, we saw a lot of the election laws changed, or the election rules, I should say, because the state legislatures didn't actually pass these laws in places like Pennsylvania, but we saw things changed on the executive level in a lot of different ways with the way the elections were done, but also with things like mask mandates and then vaccine. Those were more of in cities that we're seeing the vaccine mandates, but all that power comes from the declared national emergency. So yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah. I guess it would be more about the actions that come after the fact, like you know, take a dump on Trump all you want to. I've done my fair share of it. Like, I don't really see Trump doing some of the stuff, especially like going to this point where it didn't they decided that a lot of the money that was sent electronically to the truckers funding just never
Yeah.
even got there because of
Yeah, what actually happened is
yeah, that's
GoFundMe.
pretty
People started a GoFundMe for the truckers, and GoFundMe. I think they raised
yeah,
about $10 million. And GoFundMe initially, they said this. We've determined that this group that you're wanting to give this money to has some ties that we don't like, and we're not going to be able to give that money to them. We are going to instead give this money to charities that we approve of. Well, then you had the people who had donated.
yeah, you guys have to refund from
Well,
what I understand.
initially they said we're going to give this to other charities, and people, of course, threw a fit because you can't just take somebody's money who they've donated for one cause and give it to another. And attorney generals from several states were threatening legal action with GoFundMe, so they ended up refunding the money to everyone. But people started giving to a different platform called Give Send Go, which then came under a cyber attack, and you also had the Canadian government now is wanting to seize the money that's coming in through Give Send Go. If we look here in the Emergency Act of Canada, it passed in 1988. It gives authorities temporary power during a crisis, including restricting the movement of individuals and imposing harsher penalties for public assembly that breach the peace. Penalties up to 5,000 Canadian dollars or a maximum of 5 years in prison or both. So he's really trying to put the screws to these people to get them out of the street. Now, this says Trudeau's decision to make the move comes amid rising fears of potential violence. Nobody's afraid of potential violence except from Trudeau's government. These people are out here listening to music and dancing and hot tubbing and eating, and they're being friendly with everybody. If you go to any of the videos that are up there, it's a pretty wholesome environment. There's not anybody threatening anybody or anything like this. But we got earlier Monday, following a police operation, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police announced that a large group blocking the border crossing in Coutts, Alberta, had a cache of firearms, body armor, and a large quantity of ammunition. They say they arrested 11 people from the group within the protest that it believed was prepared to use force against the police if they tried to take down the blockade. Well, obviously they didn't use force against them. So it's kind of like one of those things when you see I don't know how it is in Canada anyway, but a lot of times you'll see somebody in the States still. The news story will say, "Man arrested with an arsenal and a huge ammo cache, and he's got like 5 rifles and 1,000 rounds or something." It's like that is not an arsenal. That's a couple of guns, and you know, I know people that take 1,000 rounds to the range on the weekend and buy ammunition by the.
I think the funniest,
What?
one of the funniest ones I've ever seen was I think the news article read, man seized with near $1 million worth of LSD. And then when it showed the actual police pictures, it was like mason jars, right? But it was like mason jars full of like clumps of like deteriorating chunks of like, I guess like mushrooms and stuff. It's like, I've never seen LSD made, but I looked, I was like, that's not LSD. So that's it's like $1 million. And then you see the picture and it's like a trailer. And it's like, I'm pretty sure a dude was just like very poorly attempting to grow mushrooms or something, because that's not LSD.
I don't know. It doesn't sound like $1 million worth, does it?
I was around here too, is what I thought was funny, but that's the only reason I saw that back in the 90s.
Well, this says authorities have had success elsewhere. Over the weekend, police dismantled a demonstration near Windsor, Ontario, that had shut down the Ambassador Bridge for nearly a week. And that's a quarter of all trade between the U.S. and Canada goes across this bridge. It goes over to Detroit. And so, of course, that got Joe Biden's attention, and Joe Biden basically spoke out he's right there with Mr. Trudeau up in Canada in support of Mr. Trudeau. We also had Americans who were in support of the trucker convoy. And, speaking of Biden, I think this is just too good not to do. So I'm sorry. I've got another opportunity. We brought his name up again. I'm going to try to play this again. It's Kyle Dunnigan's Instagram now that I've figured out the audio thing. So let's listen to this real quick.
Back in the 90s, I meant early 2000s. I didn't have good internet access or the access to...
My fellow geraniums, our nation's in crisis. Joe Brogan has just said the N-word to Snooki Goldberg. No one's watching the Winter Limp Bizkits. And I've just been informed the Prime Minister of Canada, Jussie Trombone, has been killed by trucks. He'll be sorely missed. Not only was he the first black guy Pez minister, he was a great American. And also a great Muslim guy. Our farts and prayers go out to the... Not our farts. Look. There's these trucks. They transform. They turn into robots. Oh, man, we got to get these things running around, honking around, turning into people. But don't you worry. Don't you fret. Uncle Joey is on the case. First, I sent Vice Principal Canola Hairlip to the planet of the truck people to open a dialogue with Optimus Prime. Second, I've asked Congress to increase my dosage of talkie pills. And finally, I've approved emergency funding to distribute free crack pipes to every man, woman, and transgender. To help us stay alert for when the truck people... They got maple syrup for blood, man. Stupid bastard doesn't even know Wimpy Goldblums.
I shoot my show alone in my house.
The president.
So there that is. I don't know if you could see that, Tim. That's the one I sent to you earlier. I thought it was pretty hilarious. But anyway, can you see me on your screen again now?
No,
Darn
back
it.
to CB.
See this? It only well, I don't know, man. I'm trying to get where you can see me, but hope you can see me out there. Y'all shared my screen there with you, but yeah, sorry. That's just, I thought that was hilarious. I had to get it, but I sent it to you earlier, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm looking at the screen stuff.
But so
I saw stuff again.
So yeah, we're looking at the Emergencies Act going into effect in Canada. We've got potential for some really bad situation up there with the government having this kind of authority invoked, and all it takes is one false move to really set this off, and we really don't want to see that happen. So let's hope that something like what Tim said, and the military or whoever is in charge of implementing these Emergencies Act powers and removing these people will stand with them and say, no, we don't agree with this kind of thing. Actually, Bill Maher called Justin Trudeau Hitler the other day. That's kind of Bill Maher's kind of the kind of guy who's usually a fan of somebody like Trudeau. And to hear him say like that, well, Bill Maher's really come around a lot in the last kind of after it was too late to really affect the conversation. But better late than never, I guess. But it's good to see him come around. I remember Bill Maher used to be when you remember the early 2000s, and it was right after 9/11, and he was basically crucified for saying that we shouldn't go, bombing people, even if what's his name, Osama did attack us, that we really didn't have a reason to go do full-scale invasions and this kind of thing over there. And he was basically removed from. I think he had an HBO show at the time, Politically Incorrect. I don't remember what channel he was on, but he lost that gig, and he was kind of one of the more outspoken critics of the Iraq War, at least in the mainstream culture and kind of the comedy news kind of deal. But he basically was standing against this kind of thing, and then he. When COVID started, he was on board. With like a lot of people, he wanted to do his part to try to stop this, and that he felt like that getting the vaccine was good, and he thought everybody else should kind of do, follow these mandates and things. But I don't think he was ever pro-vax mandate. But anyway, he got the vaccine and was injured by it, and then he started kind of coming around to these things and saying, wait a minute, we've really given these governments too much authority, and started coming around to what I think is the right side. And I was going to play a video of it, but I can't find one that's not like Dave Rubin or something. But when we talk about the lockdowns and we talk about this, the vaccine mandate that Canada's wanting to do, here's a study from Johns Hopkins. This is Yahoo News. This was all over the place. They found that with these lockdowns, they had very little effect on actually stopping the spread of the disease and of stopping death. They found that in Europe and the United States, these lockdowns only reduced COVID mortality by 0.2% on average. So shelter in place, it says, only reduced COVID mortality by 2.9% on average. So that's a bigger number. But in any case, the harm that was done to the economy, to people psychologically, to our culture, is really immeasurable. And I think it will ripple through, for years and years to come before we really know the true cost of this. The UN has estimated that over 40 million people who would not have otherwise starved to death due to the lockdowns of 2020 and 2021. So even with this information that these lockdowns are ineffective, even with the information that the vaccines are not effective at stopping transmission, there's evidence that they are effective at preventing hospitalization and death. But there's evidence that they're harmful in other ways too. So it's really up to each individual to decide and weigh the risks and benefits of this and decide whether it's going to work for them or if it's something that they want to do. And I don't think it's the place of any government to decide that for anyone. So I really support these truckers, and I really support. And it's crazy that Canada is the place where all this started, because we all think of Canada as these polite people who wouldn't say boo to a goose, as they say. But Canada is kind of on the front lines of this fight. They were pushed into a corner, and they're standing up. And I've got my favorite sign here from Canada, our flag of the day. the Canada Goose Gadsden flag. I think I've showed you this before, Tim. I don't know if, can you see me now? I really haven't figured this Skype thing out as far as.
I was looking at the goose, but now the
Okay.
goose is gone. But as long as you can see it, I've already
Okay,
seen it.
yeah. But I really like that. And we also got another meme here because we've had the Americans. They were saying that the Americans were donating money through the GoFundMe, but a lot of that money, most of it was actually from Canadians. And the GoFundMe money. But it came out that a lot of that money was was Canadian. And here we have a meme from Edward here with hashtag Justin Trudeau is Hitler on Twitter. And it shows Justin invoking the Emergency Powers Act. And we've got Xi Jinping calling Vladimir Putin saying, bro, you seeing this? And Putin says, and they call us dictators. He says, Xi Jinping says, hold up, got a line. And it's Kim Jong-un calling saying, bro. But anyway, we got a couple other memes because we had folks from the United States sending some money up to these folks. And, well, had a fun little meme of it here. There it is. And we've got this Lady Liberty there bringing the gas can up to Ottawa to support the truckers. And so got a lot going on that front. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up today is we're getting some reports. There were some reports last week that they may blockade the Super Bowl, which turns out that those were actually that was not accurate. But now we're getting word that a people's convoy of 1,000 U.S. truckers was reportedly gearing up to head from California to D.C. Now 1,000, I think they have 50,000 up there in Canada. 1,000 is just a little piece, but they started with way less than 50,000 up there.
And California's trucks are going there?
This says they're going from California to D.C. And according to a report on...
Well, yeah, that makes sense to me. Like, why in the world would they do that? If you've got 1,000 trucks, go blockade your own state. Take care of your shit at home before you go try to take care of the
I
Fed.
don't know. Maybe that's what they're doing, going to the Fed. Let's read a little bit here and see what we say. This is from the gatewaypundit.com. According to a report on Newsmax, the protest against COVID-19 mandates is scheduled to begin before the end of the month, but the exact start date was not provided. Eric Bowling spoke to Convoy organizers Brian Bass and Maureen Steele, who announced that the protest will not rely on big tech companies for fundraising, such as GoFundMe, who shut down the fundraiser for the Canadian convoy, and Give Send Go was hacked after hosting it. They said, we've really been able to garner some of the best and brightest on our team to make sure that this convoy goes without a hitch. We have a logistics specialist, tacticians, and are assuring we have fuel. We've brought on Exemplar Financial, which has 7 offices throughout the country with lawyers and accountants that are overseeing our fundraising to make sure that it's buttoned up, Steele said. So he says they're basically stealing themselves, Steele is, against their funds being frozen or hijacked, and they intend to protect them by having them placed in the escrow account. Now, that's what the really dangerous part about this, and that's what really bothers me about the Emergency Powers Act in Canada, is we're hearing similar talk here in the States, and we've already seen there's people who've been labeled right-wing fascists. For example, Laura Loomer was one of them, and she does kind of seem a little out there to a lot of people. But the fact is, she still has the right to bank, but she had her bank account taken because of her political speech. And I think that's part of the social credit score. That's a part of this whole Great Reset agenda that we've been talking about since the very first podcast, is being able to cut off your access to funds, being able to cut off your electricity. They want this to be a button that they push and you are unpersoned. And this is kind of the beginning stages of that we're seeing in Canada. And I don't want Mr. Biden or anybody in the United States to be getting any ideas. So we need to support these Canadian folks any way we can, because if they get rolled over, then, we're right south of there. And that I don't know that we would get rolled over, but I don't know that they wouldn't try. So I think it's important to recognize what these guys are doing, support them any way you can, and let's find out more about the 1,000 truckers here. Let's watch this. See how long this video is. Well, it's about 4 minutes. We're not going to watch the whole thing. I'm not going to watch it, but According to a Rasmussen poll published this week, the majority of Americans say they would support a trucker protest in the U.S. Now, that's 54% to 38%. That's one poll. You know, it's hard to really say, but that's a pretty good gap right there. And Rasmussen is usually a pretty good polling agency. I wouldn't have expected the yeses to be quite that high, honestly. I support it, but I got to tell you, if we have a trucker convoy, you better be ready, because who do you think brings all your goods to your stores? So you better make sure you've got food to eat. You better make sure you've got a way to heat your home. You better make sure.
There, if you look at that, that should let you know the severity of how Canada. Well, I guess like we don't have trucker convoys here in America. Canada had it first, but Canada was like here in Tennessee, for example, like lockdowns never got the way they were in New York State. But if you can imagine, like the whole country or whatever, all of Canada had the same lockdowns. So people, I would say, are much more under the thumb than we are, even way much worse. Can you imagine what it'd take to get all your friends to drive their cars in the middle of downtown Elizabeth and say we're not moving them?
Yeah, it'd be a lot. It's kind of like that thing where everybody says we're not going to take the SATs, or we're not going to pay our taxes, but then when the day comes, everybody does it because everybody's too afraid not to. But it would really be good to see people stand with this. I hope they will. 1,000 truckers is a lot to participate right out of the gate, and that would definitely grow. And that's what this article says, is they're kind of counting on that growing. Let's see how long we've been on tonight.
Really think they need to keep it in their own state and change their own state first.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the way to go on that. But I think more than anything, Tim, I think they're trying to draw attention to it, you know, more than anything, and hopefully that the thing will go nationwide, and maybe and if that happens, then you know we can put a stop to this kind of thing right now, because as we've seen the mandates rolling back, the mask mandates, Virginia just voted to end or allow parents to opt out of their school mask mandates. You even have Washington, D.C. ended their mask mandates. These people are politicians. They have polling teams. They see which way the wind is blowing. They know people don't, you know, all over the country. I hate when people say, oh, the American people don't want this and all this bullshit. But it kind of, no matter where you go, you don't really, you're not finding the popularity for those measures anymore, because largely people realize that they don't work. And you've even had people who have been on CNN advocating for masks the whole time, such as their Dr. Leanna Wynn, who pops up there and says unvaccinated people shouldn't be able to leave their house, and you should wear 5 masks or 3 masks. I know I'm exaggerating, but I do think she said 2 to 3 masks, and she literally did say unvaccinated people shouldn't be able to leave their house about a month ago. And now she's saying that the mask mandates are stupid and ineffective after she pushed them the whole time. So these people really, they do see which way the wind is blowing, and they know which side their bread is buttered on. And they know that the elections are coming up in this November, the midterm elections, and a lot of mayoral elections and gubernatorial elections are coming up too. And they now are the guys who locked everybody down for 2 years, and that's not who you want to be in an election.
When is the next election?
Yeah, well,
November?
we've got local elections coming up. We've got primary elections in May for Carter County, and then we've got, as we get into August, I think is the general for Carter County, and that's when we have the primary for the state elections, which are in November, and that'll be, you know, our state representatives. I think our state senators up again this year. You know, local, and then we've got our sheriffs and mayors, and we still need to get them on for the local, but. There was word of the trucker convoy. The reason that I was turned on to that story is because somebody who was kind of in the loop on one of the Telegram channels for the truckers sent me that, because they said that the convoy was going to come across the 40. So they would be pretty close to us here. So that is kind of a local story. But to kind of get back, I think that's about all we need to do on the trucker convoy tonight. We'll have more information on that as it develops, and you know, you can keep watching that story, and And if you see anything interesting that you think you want to share with us, you can send it over to theironmountainhour@gmail.com. We'd love to have your input on it. But another thing that is really I think important right now, and it almost feels like a red herring to me, is this Russia story that's been going on, and Ukraine and Russia. Have you been following that, Tim?
Nope. Also
Okay.
not.
Well,
Tell me that.
The best I can figure, and then there's so many news stories, and it's hard to evaluate which one is exactly accurate and which one is, pushing an agenda, and you try to read them all and figure it out. But the best I can figure is the Russian military has been staging training exercises that they do at this time every year on their western border, at the border of Ukraine there, in the Crimea area that they annexed in 2014. A lot of people probably don't know. They really had a revolution in Ukraine in 2014. There was a lot of shady shit going on. They overthrew their government. You had Russia invaded South Ossetia and annexed that. Well, we say invaded, but it was really part of Russia originally. So they annexed that territory and took it back over there in Crimea. And this was 7-8 years ago. But Russia has been holding that area, and they have training exercises on there. Well, in the meantime, the United States have sold Ukraine a lot of really high-tech weaponry. And Ukraine is piling this high-tech weaponry up right on its border and pointing it at Russia. And they're saying, "Don't attack us, Russia." And then Russia's like, "Yeah, we're not going to attack you." And they just keep pointing these, billions and billions of dollars worth of Western weapons at the Russians and say, "Don't you do it, Russia." And they're saying, "We're not going to." Well, we're gonna get you if you do. No options are on the table, and Russia's still saying, we're not gonna invade." So here, check this out right quick. This is BBC
away
News.
From the border back to bases, but NATO Secretary General said he hadn't seen evidence of a real de-escalation. The British Prime Minister added the intelligence scene on Ukraine is still not encouraging. In Moscow, Germany's Chancellor has met Vladimir Putin as last-ditch diplomacy continues. Olaf Scholz said war in Europe was unthinkable, but diplomacy wasn't exhausted. Vladimir Putin told a news conference Russia, of course, did not want war, but Moscow's concerns still hadn't been met. And significantly, the Russian president said he wanted to solve the issue of Ukraine's possible membership of NATO now. Have a listen.
And today, we see infrastructure of NATO right on our doorstep. And this question is being discussed about Ukraine joining NATO. They say it's not going to happen tomorrow. Is it going to happen the day after tomorrow? Is it going to change for us in terms of historic perspective? We need to resolve this question now. We need to resolve this now over the course of these negotiations. And this is our position, and we hope very much that our concern will be heard by our partners and taken seriously.
I've never felt...
So, Russia is basically upset because of the NATO weaponry right there, and trying to pull. There's the talk of pulling Ukraine into NATO. Which, is there really any purpose for NATO anymore? Was it not set up in opposition to the Warsaw Pact nations, which dissolved with the end of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s? But we've kept NATO there, and the North Atlantic Treaty Association with a lot of the allies who basically are trying to stop or was set up to stop the spread of communist influence throughout Europe and the Atlantic. But it just kind of seems like there's not really a lot of purpose for them to begin with. And then, Tim, you and I were talking earlier, it's almost like that Ukraine is something like a deep state shell company, just basically a place for these actors in government and NGOs, these kind of revolving door folks to hide money and invest it and make a lot of profit off it. Like it appeared, or it was the vice president's son was accused of doing, as he worked for the gas company there, Burisma gas company in Ukraine, where he'd never had any experience, and he went on the board getting millions of dollars a year, and kind of similar situation to what they had going on in China. It's almost like it's just it's a place for, it's like a, I don't know, a playground for them to invest their money in, and away from the eyes of the oversight agencies of the U.S. government.
I think there's a lot of cases
Yeah,
like
well,
that. Like, I think that's the more glaring one that's come. Well, sort of like the Panama
yeah,
Papers. Remember those things
and
came out?
nothing came of it.
You can't do that in your own country. And it's the same thing with, I think, Ukraine. At the end of the Cold War, I'm sure if anybody's ever seen, there's I will say a stylized version of the accounts of what happened after the Cold War in Russia was essentially they used Ukraine to start trafficking weapons to all kinds of third world countries, and they do that all over the world. And you never wake up to because who's paying attention to like weapons in Ukraine, and so you get away with it for a very long time, and so nobody ever gets busted doing that sort of thing. I'm wondering what the end game is with China. Honestly, I think they use Russia as a boogeyman, and they use the surrounding former Soviet countries as shell countries. I don't know how that sort of thing works, to be honest with you, but it's obvious they're doing something. Man, I wanted to bring Drew on here, but there's a subject that I really feel like is kind of related to these with cryptocurrency. I'll have to ask Drew about it later, but I feel like what they do with like these sorts of countries like China and Ukraine is kind of like, have you ever heard of, I think it's a YouTuber named Ice
I've seen the name, but I've not watched his videos.
Okay, well, another one, I'll save the skinny on and just tell you. Essentially, what a lot of these YouTubers and other people that stream have started doing is hyping cryptocurrency, only to people find out later on that they were involved in the cryptocurrency to begin with, that they were hyping. And then, they get out from under it. And now you just have, and it's happening with NFTs and stuff too. And then you get out from under it. And since there's no federal regulation of cryptocurrencies like there is with the trade, what is it called? Like on Wall Street, they can't really bust these guys on a criminal level the way they can other people. And there's a bunch of them that have really kind of, for lack of a better word, just ham-boned and fucked their fans over and their followers by getting them to invest in some shitty coin and just pulling the legs right out from under it. I've found so many cases of just these small-time groups of people making a killing off of these cryptocurrencies. And I swear, now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, that has to be what
it's like running it like a Ponzi scheme. It's getting people in on the ground floor, pumping it up, and then pulling it out from under them.
Yeah, it's just another way for them to launder money, because if like goofy people on YouTube are figuring out that they can do that to people, the people that created it up at the top, that's the reason it was made to begin with, was money laundering. It has to be.
Yeah, there's definitely something to that. To finish up the Ukraine story, there was a lot of talk in the press and from the White House and the intelligence, and we saw really if we go back a couple of weeks, we saw an exchange between a spokesman from the State Department that they had evidence that the Russians were going to pull false flag attacks to make it look like that Ukraine was attacking them so they could attack them back. And when pressed on it, the spokesman could not produce any evidence of it and could not, in fact, produce any documentation of any kind, and stated that his telling you was the declassified information that this was actually happening. It was pretty embarrassing for the gentleman there at the State Department. I think it was the State Department. I hope I'm right about that. But in any case, we heard a lot of talk about that, and then we saw that there was a date, allegedly, that Russia was going to attack Ukraine, and that was supposed to be today. And today passed. We haven't seen anything like that so far. But we got a tweet here from Clint Ehrlich from Maria Zakharova, the spokesman for Russia's foreign ministry, has requested that the Western media publish a full scale of Russia's upcoming invasions for this year. I'd like to plan my vacation, she says. So the day came and went. We've got no Russian attack. But yesterday, we did have a cyber attack in Ukraine. The Ukraine Defense Ministry website and the banks were knocked offline. So the Defense Ministry went down. So I guess as they maybe they should have, if Alexander Vindman had taken their offer to be their defense minister, that might not have happened. But the banks were knocked offline right before the alleged Russian attack was coming, and this kind of goes right with what we've seen from what we saw from the FBI and during the Obama administration, the CIA. We found out that they actually had the ability to cause cyber attacks and go back in and leave the fingerprints on these servers that would make it appear that whoever they wanted had been in there. They could make it appear that Russians had hacked something. They could make it appear that you hacked something, Tim. They could leave your digital fingerprints across everything.
Oh, absolutely. Just they know what everybody's IP interest is. They could just, even if they didn't make it look one, go in and change yours.
And there was a lot of this going on. Go ahead.
I'm not actually sure if I know if that's how that works or not.
It is similar to that.
It's pretty easy. You can imagine that computer people are good at fakery. You'd imagine how good they
it's a little more complex than that, but it's the basic same idea. They can put your fingerprints all over whatever they want, and we found that out in the Obama administration when that information was released, when the Iranian Stuxnet virus took out their nuclear reactors over there. They put, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, they put Russia's fingerprints on that, and we saw with all the drama with the whole spying on Trump's campaign and stuff, that there were accusations of that having happened with the CrowdStrike servers where the DNC email leaks were taken, with that Julian Assange ended up with and publishing, where he published Clinton and Podesta's emails. We saw that same kind of technique was used to try and frame the Russians for that, according to some people. So this would kind of go right with that technique that's been used before by Western intelligence many times, and that to have it come a day before the alleged Russian attack that was coming, it kind of sounds fishy and suspicious to me. But honestly, this all kind of seems like a distraction from something else. I'm not sure what. It's kind of like one of those head fakes or that look over here thing. Watch my left hand, so while I smack you with the right, and you'll never see it coming. But I did want to bring it up because it's been a very interesting past couple of weeks with this, and there's so much happens in between each episode. There's no way we can cover all the episodes on a week, or all the news in a weekly show. And you know, look how long we've been talking about these two topics. Eventually, if we can get people to watch, I would like to go, to a nightly show at some point. But for now, we'll try to do a couple of shows a week to where we can get a few different topics. We can kind of maybe do a news and current events stream through the week on Wednesday night, and then Sunday we can do our standard stream where we have kind of a topic and we discuss on it. And now this coming Sunday, if you're still with us this far in the video, we're actually we're going to be doing our Second Amendment episode, and we're going to go be doing some shooting. We're going to do some shoot a few different guns and different rounds at different targets and see what happens, and take Tim out to the range. Goff is going to go with us, and we've got a couple of viewers that want to go too. If you'd like to go, you can holler at us at theironmountainhour@gmail.com, or you can shout at us on the Discord that I'll sit in the video description there. So we'd like to have you join us for some good old exercising the Second Amendment, and if you want to be on the channel, we can do that too. But I think that's about where we'll wrap it up for tonight. It's a work night, it's a weeknight, and I know I've got to get to bed. It's almost midnight. I'm not as young as I used to be.
I made a deal with God and the devil.
Tell me about it.
So I'm just like, Said you're not as young as you used to be. I was gonna say,
Okay.
well, yeah.
Well, I'm not quick on
Um,
the.
so this Sunday's Second Amendment, and then I still want to talk about the flood because I guess from an angle that is, I guess, more along the lines of like looking back on it now, it's still really it's still pretty obvious there
Mhm.
really was a flood. So why are they still lying about it? Because like they're still saying there
Well,
isn't
dude,
one.
do
It's
you
so
remember
confusing to me.
when we were kids, they found freaking Noah's Ark up on Mount Ararat. They found a big boat where there's Noah's Ark or whatever. They found a giant boat that matched, matched the dimensions of the Ark up on a freaking mountain in the
Yeah, but
Caucasians,
their problem
the Caucasus.
has always been from the from I guess what we call the modern day skeptic community was it's impossible to squeeze two of every animal onto one
Yeah.
boat and all this. And so they always want to argue. I don't know. It's almost like I didn't realize that atheists would argue the exact same way we would argue as Christians, only from the opposite side, where they would force you to argue about about your book, because you're not allowed as a Christian to argue outside the Bible. So if they would pigeonhole you into that book, you
Right.
couldn't argue. And I never realized as an idiotic person back then that there was a lot of stuff I could have brought up that they just wouldn't talk about, which was it's pretty obvious there was a flood. Is it possible that there was just 400 different flood stories and it's just all the same one? And maybe but that just blows my mind that even like something as obvious that the world flooded at one point with like near 200 sunken cities that we know about, and still atheists would say, well, that one, no, there still was no flood though, because that would mean this much of the Bible has to be true. Then we can't allow any of it to be real.
Well, we've talked about Graham Hancock on on the show before, and Graham Hancock has explored several of these sunken cities. They found one of the coolest ones was off the coast of Japan, and there's lots of evidence of this, and there's all kinds of evidence that especially in the Middle East, that whole area had been flooded. So. Yeah, that sounds like a good episode, Tim. We've kind of come adjacent to the flood a couple of times in talking about the Nephilim, and we've mentioned, I think, on the Anunnaki and the Planet X episode, we got into it a little bit there, but we've not really had a very long conversation on it. So I think that's a good idea. And with our Second Amendment episode, we'll also hit a little bit of local angles here. So we've got a lot to talk about with. With the state of Tennessee, we just recently passed the constitutional carry bill, which allows anyone who is not a felon to carry a firearm concealed or open in the state. So that removes the requirement of you to ask permission from the government to defend yourself. So I think that's a great thing. I think we're going to expand on that more. I like how Texas did. I'll save this for Sunday. I could go on forever on this one. But anyway, I thank you for joining us. If you're with us tonight, have a good night. If you see this the next day, don't forget to like and subscribe and give us a thumbs up there. It really helps people find the videos and really helps us in the YouTube algorithm. So with that, there goes my earbud. We will see you on Sunday for our Second Amendment episode. Can't wait. See you then. Bye, Tim.
See you, man.